Videodrome has everything you'd expect from director David Cronenberg: subversive themes, absurd body horror, and an unpleasant look at the human psyche. This was Tara's first time with the film, so let's see if we can decode the rogue signal that is Videodrome. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, is Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
This is a science fiction movie podcast. We get together and talk about sci-fi movie. We are in the middle of 80s season, and we are tackling Videodrome today, the David Cronenberg movie, for a couple of reasons. One, Tara had never seen it before, and she wanted to. Good a reason as any, but also because we've done a few Cronenberg movies at this point, or at least, well, we've done at least one David Cronenberg movie. But we also did a Brandon Cronenberg movie.
Yes.
Yes, I'm confusing myself, but yes. So yes,
this will only be the second one we've done, but we will eventually do The Fly,
and we'll eventually do Scanners, and we'll eventually do Existence. Is that how you say it?
Existence.
I'm sure there's definitely more Cronenberg in our future, not to worry, but it was time to get number 2 out of the way. And Videodrome is, I don't know if it's arguably his most famous, but I feel like it's the title that comes up a lot. Maybe it's because the title sounds more like unique.
Some of the, I mean, honestly, the only thing I remember from this movie scene before is when they would show clips of it for the special effects that was done for it. That's about it.
Yeah. I had seen this before. It'd been a little while though, so it was kind of a refresh for me coming in. We'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. The plot of Videodrome is kind of hard to describe. I'll just sort of say kind of how it begins, which is James Woods is the lead actor. He plays a character named Max Wren, who runs like a CD cable channel, right? This cable channel that shows mostly violent stuff and softcore porn, and he's looking for the next extreme thing, and he seeks out weird stuff from all over the planet to put on his channel. And someone he knows is like sort of tech guy that he knows picks up a broadcast coming from somewhere else that is just a show called Videodrome, that is just this torture show where people are getting tortured. There's no plot, there's no nothing else, but he thinks it's the next big thing, and he tries to investigate it and seek out what it is to put it on his channel, and it kind of leads down a weird path, which is probably not surprising given that it's David Cronenberg, but it goes down a weird path. Let's just leave it at that for now, and we'll get into it in spoilers. So, as per usual, there's a lot of body horror stuff, there's a lot of sexual stuff, there's violent stuff. It is very, very Cronenberg. Maybe the most Cronenberg movie that ever Cronenberged. So, yeah. Okay. Well, Tara, you hadn't seen this before, so I'm very curious to see how you felt about it.
I really like this one. I like this one more than I like Crimes of the Future, although I will say Crimes of the Future seems kind of like a remake of this in a way.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I like both, so I have no I think there's some similar themes, obviously, that are sprinkled between them, but I do think the main focus of this is quite a bit different. But yeah, but I've always been
I would say it's as much of a autobiographical flick as Crimes of the Future was.
No, I can definitely see why. That's why I'm saying there's definitely shared themes, because I can definitely see why you're saying that. It's about this guy who's curating like extreme TV, which is kind of like Cronenberg, making these extreme movies that are challenging and thought-provoking.
Yeah, he even has to like sit down with it and be interviewed for a television series, and how about justifying his violence and sexual content that he shows on his channel.
If anything, that scene is probably the most direct. Like, this is just part of my life that I'm putting into this movie. Like, maybe verbatim. Although I don't think David Cronenberg ever just turned and asked out the like psychiatrist or
that
lady.
That seems so funny.
Yeah. So I like Videodrome quite a bit. It was one of the more I think partly because I've just always liked the idea of like rogue analog like TV and radio signals and like creepy stuff coming from somewhere and all that stuff. Obviously, it's a very open to interpretation film by the end, because it's David Cronenberg. Like that tends to be what he does. Not always, but it tends to be what he does. So, but yeah, obviously the body horror stuff and the special effects, the practical special effects, they pull some of that off, are very impressive. I like the tone of the movie and the overall atmosphere. James Woods is perfect for this role. I don't think he's that great a person, but he kind of fits the sleazy, morally corrupt TV executive quite well. So yeah, I think Videodrome's quite good. It's not my favorite Cronenberg movie. In fact, my favorite Cronenberg movie is not even a sci-fi movie. My favorite Cronenberg movie is A History of Violence. But that's
not my favorite.
That's fine. What's your favorite?
The Fly.
Fair enough. I think a lot of people would pick The Fly. People like that movie.
But I'm also just not a fan of History of Violence.
I like the music in this, and I like kind of the vibe, because even the way it starts with the flickering and the scan lines, there's kind of a mood that comes with this type of technology that I just really like.
Yeah, it is a difficult to interpret film, and like when you look at it holistically, I think as you're watching it, the themes are very blatant, but I'm not exactly sure how I want to interpret the ending yet, so I'm looking forward to the discussion. Plus, there's so much, like, once you realize that we have an unreliable narrator, it's like, well, how much, like, I feel like I need to watch it a second time in order to have, like, a thorough discussion about it,
Yeah, it definitely feels like one that'll benefit from multiple viewings and sort of thinking about when stuff is really happening, when stuff is just kind of in the main character's head, and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the themes that are there, I think what's impressive and why this movie's still very relevant is that it feels like everything it's saying about TV in 1983, it's actually just as relevant today. You just have to swap out TV for social media, and all of a sudden it's like just as poignant. It's just, everything it's saying is just as valid, despite the fact that we've moved on to a slightly different medium for it. But
well, sure, I think it still can be used for just media today in general still.
Sure, but the stuff it was saying, or the stuff that it sort of brings up, was specifically making me think of social media and the spread of ideas, like people being influenced, and
Sure,
I just the idea of being addicted to it and it having to be constantly fed to you for dopamine, like that stuff, like that's just social media in a nutshell. Like,
true. Also, the politicizing of everything felt very like just news anchors today. Like,
oh sure, yeah.
I thought there was a commentary on that in this as well.
Yeah, because if anything, everything the movie's talking about has only gotten more heightened since it came out. In the same way that Truman Show kind of like mocked a genre that didn't quite exist yet, but then the genre became a thing. Nothing as extreme as Truman Show, of course, but the idea that it was kind of ahead of its time. This, in a weird way, is talking about the media of the time it was made, but everything it's saying has only become more and more true as media's gotten more advanced, and we're on to even more direct and live formats, where it's not just you can watch a TV channel. Now you're getting live updates from the internet constantly about everything. You're constantly looking for stuff. And we might have reached the zenith, honestly, with stuff like TikTok, where people are just watching 10-second videos because people don't have attention spans anymore. Maybe I sound like an old man now, but like, I just don't get it. Like that entire platform is just loud and obnoxious to me. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't downloaded it because I'm afraid to. And not because China stuff, but because like I don't like having time wasting apps on my phone. Oh sure. Because I will get sucked in.
Yeah, I don't have it on my phone. I do post the odd promotional thing for the sake of the content, but I just do it on the web browser. I do not browse TikTok. Like, I hate when you go to TikTok and it just starts auto-playing the first thing and it's just something loud happening, and I'm like, I hate this. Stop auto-playing things. I hate auto-playing videos on any website. Just don't unless I've clicked on a video on YouTube, which obviously I then wanted to play. I do not want anything to autoplay.
Okay.
I'm just, I realize that I probably sound ancient to someone who's like 20 right now, but all of it's annoying. I don't like it.
You're such an old man with your tie.
Hey, this was enforced by patrons. Thank you very much. The tie tier on patreon.com/MaleFuzzTV.
And we talked about this movie already.
I'm going on to the bit. Well, everything I was saying before is somewhat relevant in that this idea of like cycling through all these cable channels in the middle of the night is very much what the old TikTok was. That's what people did in the 80s and the 90s for that type of fix. It was just cycling through cable channels. So it was an interesting comparison to make. But yeah, we can get back into the movie itself. I mean, what else do you want to talk about in spoiler free? Like, do you want to talk about performances or?
I agree with what you said about James Woods. I mean, like, he was never, well, he was always up there in the tier of actors, like A tier of actors for me for a long time, until his more recent, maybe in the last like 10 years, social media exposing who he really is. And he's not a good guy from the sounds of it. So, but he is a good actor. Like, he is fascinating to look at. He's kind of a weird looking guy, but makes him more like relatable.
He's got like a wiry kind of face, you know, very gaunt, very intense eyes.
But it's also kind of full. It's an interesting face. But he's believable, right? Like he always passes as this character who has to probably be a little bit of a sleazeball and be a little bit of a dick. He plays it so well, so natural.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think first things first is that he's not a hero in this movie. He's not like some guy you're rooting for in any way. If anything, there's a little bit of a kind of like a karma element to what happens to him because of who he is and what he does. Mm-hmm. It just kind of happens to him in a different way than what he's doing to regular people, and so there's kind of a karma is the best way I can describe it. Like a comeuppance to it's an ironic comeuppance in a lot of ways, but I think I was surprised actually at how short the movie was when I put it on. I was like, oh yes, it's only 90 minutes. Like, I don't. That's a runtime that I assume is just for comedies and horror movies. I very rarely see other genres hit 90 minutes.
It's pretty dense though. It's a dense 90 minutes.
Yeah, he gets to a lot of material in the 90 minutes.
I love all the practical effects in the film.
Oh yeah,
I mean there's one particularly explosive scene that I was really compelled by, but also grossed out by.
Yeah, and this is probably one of his least phallic movies, but there is at least one or two effects that do have a bit of phallic quality to them.
Yep.
So we'll get into those when we talk about the spoilers, but it's not free of adult material. There's definitely some discussion of various things.
It's a Cronenberg film. I mean, you get all the staples, plus just some horrific violence.
Yes. So. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know what more we can really talk about without going into spoilers, just because it is, it's such a mystery film where it starts to unravel like what Videodrome is, where it comes from, and that's kind of what the main character's investigating. And I feel like it is a spoiler to start really talking about any of the details of that. So, needless to say, it kind of explores the idea of like extreme media and people needing more and more extreme stuff in their entertainment. I believe the phrase that's used early on is that we're overstimulated, so we need more extreme forms of stimulation. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And again, that's one of the phrases that really felt like, oh, that applies even more today than it did in 1983.
Yeah. Are you talking about porn?
No, I just meant social media again, but yeah, sure. I'm glad you lowered the tone here, Tara. Very good.
Yep. I mean, the movie's talking about that stuff too.
No, it is. It's a very like seedy little film. Like you kind of want a shower after you watched it.
It's pretty gross.
Which is not uncommon for Cronenberg, admittedly. He tends to make you feel a little icky, like it's like, oh, I'm suddenly aware of every part of my body feeling something. I don't like it. I must cleanse immediately. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So I suppose we'll just give the spoiler warning so we can get into it properly. So, spoilers for Videodrome. You've been warned if you've not seen it. I don't know if this is necessarily a go through an order type movie, just because, like, remembering the sequence of events may actually be quite tough without, like, intense note taking. So,
Yeah, like I said, the movie's pretty dense. Like the scenes go places pretty quickly too.
Yeah, so I think maybe some of the different things we can talk about. Obviously, we have to talk about the character and like what happens to him, what Videodrome actually is. I think just talking about some of the practical effects might be a sort of fun thing on its own.
Sure.
Because I think the first thing that you really see, like that feels like an effect, is when he's handed like a tape. I think I want to say it was a Betamax tape rather than a VHS tape, but it doesn't really makes much of a difference. But it starts kind of like moving, like it's bubbling, right? So it's like a almost like a stop motion looking effect, and it's like, oh, what's going on there, right? And then that kind of comes back when his entire TV starts doing that, and it's really interesting because because later on it's actual flesh looking, like they've made it look like flesh. But the first time it happens, it's still black, so it's kind of like black, but it's like jet black, but it's got like veins are starting to appear and it's starting to bubble. And it's like the front grill's bubbling and all the rest of it. This might be the scene where he sticks his head into the TV because the woman's voice is like trying to draw him in.
Well, I think it's meant to be very sexual.
Oh yeah.
I mean, even like the veins popping out and stuff is also kind of a throbbing thing, you know. So the whole thing is very like sexual.
A throbbing thing, you say?
You know what I mean. I need another woman co-host. Cindy, where you at? Seb or Allison?
I'm well aware of what you're getting at. I just thought it was funny that you were dancing around it.
Yeah, I don't want to say penis, but
honestly, the thing that was the most phallic to me, other than of course like when he's watching the Asian show at the start, and this woman reveals like a dildo that's in like a fancy container, with a very, very weirdly shaped tip. I don't want to get into it, but it was a very elongated tip. Right, we can move on. Let's not talk about it. But the thing that was the most phallic to me was it's when there's like it does the Freddy Krueger thing. The coming out from the wall thing, but it's like his hand holding the gun, but it's coming from inside the TV. But at this point, the TV's turned into flesh, so it's like sort of stretching out skin. But because it's sort of like, pointy shaped, it was probably the most phallic it ever got, because especially when it's shot. Because literally when it shoots, you see like a sort of hole form at the end of it, and it was like, okay, this is like the TV's.
The close-ups of it were very ribbed.
That's the word you went with.
In honor of Art LaFleur and the Blob.
No, because like, see when it actually fires though, I was like, that is very phallic now. Like, it's almost like it's intentionally trying to feel that the TV is like blowing its load onto, onto himself, basically.
I mean, that's what his channel was, right? He already had the softcore porn and the violence, and it's sort of a merging of the two and trying to be more extreme.
Yeah,
that's what he wants. That's what he's asked for.
Yeah, and it's almost like he's literally like he's almost like the TV's actually kind of reaching out to make love and like engage in the violence with him directly. So yeah. I mean, I suppose that leads us on to the discussion, like, because it starts with him going on to defend his channel on this like talk show, and it's basically
this is after he's already watched the first Videodrome.
Yeah, he's watched the first pirate sort of like, because they've basically just
so all of this from now on has to be taken with a grain of salt. Like, what's real?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing though. Like, nothing in the movie like happens without there being some real effect on him. So you could argue that everything you visually see is untrustworthy, but at the very least, he has been affected. So there's some truth in what's been said about the Videodrome signal.
Yes.
So,
But Blondie wasn't really there.
Blondie?
The singer? Blondie?
You mean Debbie Harry?
Yes.
Okay.
She was Blondie, right?
I don't know. She must have been on the TV show. Like,
I don't know, because I thought the TV used her image to seduce him, and they were suggesting it was from the very beginning.
Yeah, but I kind of took that as everything after, because so the first time we see her, she's on the same like talk show as him. She's sitting next to him, and the host is asking her expertise because she's like a radio host she's like Fraser Crane basically. She does therapy on radio kind of thing, and they ask her opinion a couple times, and James Woods obviously, or I should say Max Wren. Max like is acting. You know, he's kind of throwing questions back at them. She's saying they're overstimulated. He's like, well, that dress you're wearing is very stimulating. And I'm like, all right. It's a bold move to try and sexually harass someone when you're live on the air. Might come back and haunt you. But of course, like when he goes to see her at her work afterwards, like from that point on, I think it's when it's like, okay, like is she anything at that point on? I feel like she has to be there this first time. It's almost like he has to see her first, so that the TV or the Videodrome then knows to use her image to like corrupt him and lure him in, right?
Maybe. It's hard to tell. Like she does have like many outfit changes and stuff like that. But I don't know. Like the ending kind of made me wonder because it sounded like in the end it said that she had died. She was like one of the earliest ones to get killed.
Yeah, it did say that. No, that's true. I still kind of thought that was after the first time he saw her, but I mean...
Maybe.
I guess I just took it that way, because I don't understand how it works when he's sitting there turning to talk to her. You know, when the host is sitting there and...
Well, I mean, it also shows that he, like, is replacing people with her image.
Okay, yeah, okay. True.
So there could be somebody there, just wasn't her.
All right, yeah, okay, that makes some sense. I'm not really... That's the thing, you started this by saying that you're questioning what's real and not real in this movie, and I don't think it's that important.
No, probably not. This is fun.
This is not Total Recall, where we can have a debate, because fundamentally, yeah, we know some of this is unreliable, but it doesn't really affect anything how much of it is unreliable in a weird way, because all of it is kind of like open to interpretation of being accurate or not.
Yeah, it's all about the manipulation of, by the television.
Yeah, so he has like these sort of steamy love scenes with her, but what's really interesting is a bit of character analysis, is that he's very gung-ho about, oh, we need more extreme, we need something sexy and violent and like pushing the envelope. But when she starts watching Videodrome with him and reveals that she likes to be cut and like hurt and stuff during sex, and they do a little bit of that and he seems into it, afterwards when she's like, oh, maybe I should go and like be on Videodrome, he immediately like gets very defensive and says, no, you should stay away from those people. And I'm like, this is a bit hypocritical coming from you, given that you're like all gung-ho about it. So it kind of reveals him as being very hypocritical, and I think it kind of opens the door to like examining what he does to the general public is kind of what Videodrome then literally does to him, right? It's very obviously it's not literal when he's doing it to the public, but the idea that he's putting out these more extreme things, this softcore porn, this violent stuff, and it's all just trash, right? Because he doesn't care that there's no plot to Videodrome. He's like, oh, this is great, there's no plot. Like, you know, at least most stuff you watch that has violence in it, at least there's some framework to have a point to the violence.
Nope.
It's
just violence for the sake of violence.
Yeah, that's all it is. And he puts that on the public, and the questions are raised, like, are you like contributing to the way people think in a poor manner? Are you manipulating them? Are you like desensitizing them to things? And this is a real debate, obviously, in the real world, that by and large, even though his response isn't very well worded in the movie, it is actually the correct one, in that most people who do enjoy violent things, I think us included, would say, well, no, it's not real, and it's a release. It's like you get to enjoy something that you wouldn't enjoy in the real world, and that's okay, right? But he just kind of fobs it off. He doesn't like really take it all that seriously. He says he cares about it, but it doesn't really feel like he does. It feels like he's just kind of saying some PR stuff. It
feels like he has to be there.
Yeah.
And he definitely does not care or want to be there.
He's more interested in flirting with the psychiatrist.
With legs next to him and the lighting up a cigarette on the set.
Yeah. So he's very hypocritical, and then what the Videodrome does to him is that it starts to manipulate him and makes him think differently and corrupts him. And you can't really feel that sorry for him, because I'm like, this is exactly what you kind of were just doing to everyone else. It's just more literal with you. Because we learn the Videodrome actually creates a tumor in the viewer, and it makes you hallucinate, or it makes you hallucinate first, and that creates the tumor. I think was the exact order of the symptoms, but regardless.
It's not a tumor.
But it is in this case, Arnold.
It's not a tumor. It's
Arnold!
a new organ.
Oh, that's that history. That's Crimes of the Future. I'm trying to remember the movie.
They say it in this. They call it a new organ.
Yeah. Clearly, that's an idea and a motif that he's come back to. But then again, all the ideas in Crimes of the Future are motifs that he's had before. None of,
Yeah.
That's why I don't think it's specifically a callback to this movie, because there's things that he's been playing with his entire career.
Sure. There's just a lot of it in this that I recognized.
He starts to see things. He starts to see really horrific things, and we'll talk a bit more of those. He's influenced, and that's the idea that Videodrome is actually something that's been created by a group to try and control people into doing things. That again made me think of social media. The idea of targeted, the idea of seeing lots of right-wing propaganda, or seeing stuff that'll try and manipulate him to vote in a certain way. I felt like some of that stuff was coming in, but here it was they're actually getting him to kill people for him. It's hey, we need you to kill these guys because we want to take over your channel and broadcast this evil signal to everyone. That's all fascinating stuff. There's actually a lot of depth to the intent of Videodrome and what it is.
Yeah, and the fact that there really seems to be two factions involved in this, where they're trying to outdo each other. Much so that they both use the same, manipulated person to turn against them.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about that, though, although admittedly, yeah, the good side, which I'm going to call them just for an ease of term, is that they do seem better in that. So this Dr. Oblivion, who's the psychiatrist who's also on the TV show at the start, but he's there on a TV screen on the set. He doesn't show up in person. And the big thing with him is we learn that he's been dead for a year, and his daughter's just he recorded so many monologues about various subjects that she's just using them to make him appear as if he's alive. But we find out that he actually developed the Videodrome signal, and basically it's been used for bad, right? He wanted to do something good with it. He wanted to use it to make people better, which arguably still kind of manipulative and bad. But it's been used now by the evil government or whoever it is to control people instead, and that's now what's happening with the villains who are in control of it and want to broadcast it. So even that, how much technology, whether it be social media, whether it be YouTube, how much of it is made with just the intention of being a
good
platform.
intentions.
Yeah, and then someone uses it poorly. How many things are designed for a reason and then someone turns it into a weapon? That's effectively what it's getting at, I think.
Yep. That is the burden of progress.
Anything's a weapon if you really put your mind to it.
Language.
Paperclip.
Oh. You're gonna MacGyver this one, huh?
I was thinking John Wick could do something with it, but yeah, MacGyver could make something out of it.
I watched that movie. It's very good.
Yeah, I think it's got a lot there to it. The only thing I don't like about where it goes with what Videodrome is that I do think it loses some of its mystique as the movie goes on, because when it starts off, it's oh, this is some sort of rogue signal coming from some other country. What is it? And immediately, even the first time I watched it, I'm oh, this is definitely real violence. He's assuming it's fake, but it's not. This is real.
Oh yeah.
And the reason why it's this violent stuff, because the Videodrome signal that's manipulating people can be in anything, but apparently watching something violent makes it easier to trigger, because it opens part of your brain up that otherwise is more closed off. So it's okay, fair enough. But I think as the movie goes on, it does lose a little bit of its mystique when you're oh, this was developed sort of close by, and it's the mythology of these two factions sort of fighting over it is kind of interesting, but it's not as
I think so anyway.
Yeah, but it's not as creepy and mysterious as it was at the start of the movie, which is oh, it's some other part of me almost wants this to go more more God told me to. That's part of me wants it to go down that kind of route.
Well, that's always a good idea.
Of crazy, but it's more of a structured kind of crazy, I guess.
Honestly, it's the Blob, 50s Blob versus the 88 Blob, right? So the 50s Blob, it was this mysterious thing that came from outer space. But in the 80s Blob, it did not come from outer space. But I think that made that more interesting.
I see what you're saying. I'm just at a loss for how that compares to Videodrome.
Because you want the Videodrome signal to be more mysterious, and we don't have an answer.
Yeah. Whereas we do get an answer, and it's relatively
it's
clear
closer
cut.
than you think. Yeah. No, I like that.
It's a relatively clear cut answer.
I like that. I mean, the idea of maybe because I was thinking of Crimes of the Future when they were talking about the new organ, but the idea that maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe we should keep it. Maybe it's our body is changing, our brains are changing, the way we consume media is actually changing us. But maybe, I don't know, maybe it's for the better. Maybe we shouldn't ignore. Maybe we shouldn't treat it like a tumor.
Well, that's the other big idea that comes into it, is that, so once the bad guys, so we get this sort of businessman, what was his name? Vern? I don't know, I can't remember his name. But there's sort of a guy that shows up who claims that he's going to help him, and he gives him this sort of big, weird VR-looking helmet to record his hallucinations. And
that's awesome.
It turns out that, like, you know, he's obviously part of this, as is the guy that even helped get him the signal. He's actually been like a double agent this whole time to do all this testing on him. Like, so Max has been targeted. He's been a targeted victim of this before anyone else. And the whole idea is that they're going to make him kill certain people, and they make him kill his like two like co-producers of the network. So we get this scene where he goes into his office and he shoots both of them. We'll go back and talk about how the gun fuses to his hand, because that is pretty cool and I want to talk about it.
Very Tetsuo.
Yeah, but he kills them, but then he goes to see Bianca Oblivion, right? The dead psychiatrist's daughter, who's been showing him the tapes of him, and she's like, look, you've basically developed new powers because of this tumor, right? You can do things now. You can use them against them. You don't have to do what they tell you, because they've sent him there to kill her. And she's like, no, you can use this to fight back. They've done this to you.
Full Neo.
Kind of. So sure enough, like the last chunk of the movie is him getting after the people who did this to him. Mainly the guy who gave him the signal in the first place, and then the business suit guy who's also selling glasses, and he's at like a seminar revealing the spring collection, I believe was the thing. So that's kind of where the movie goes, and he goes after them, and we'll talk about how he does all these things because they're all worth talking about. They're all kind of big set piece moments with effects and whatnot. But so yeah, you've got that idea that he actually uses it for quote unquote good. Arguably, murdering people is not necessarily good, but he's able to he uses it to fight back effectively. But the end of the movie, just to sort of like talk about his character arc and how it ends, is he commits suicide. You know, he's talking to, again, Nikki, the woman that he kind of fell for at the start, who then he thought went to Videodrome and died, but then it seems to be revealed that she was dead the whole time, and it was just she was all a hallucination, making him fall more into the Videodrome signal. She appears in this TV in front of him and says, like, you're now, you have to become the new flesh. You're already part of the way there, but you can only actually transcend to the new flesh by killing the old flesh. And the TV kind of like explodes, but as if it's like got like, you know, a body inside, because it's like blood and like body parts that come out of it when the screen explodes.
Yeah, it's an organic television.
Yeah. So the movie ends with him holding his like fused gun hand up to his head, and you know it cuts to black as he presumably pulls the trigger. Yeah, obviously like, we'll sit and try and interpret this and like what we think's this means and what's happening, because it is like a big ending that kind of, it's like, okay, this is making a point, because the whole movie's kind of feel like it's building up to a point, and this is the point, but we'll have to try and decipher what that point is, because it's not the most clear.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is that he's been manipulated by both parties, and then he thinks that he's on the side of good, but he gets manipulated one more time into killing himself by who he thought was the good side.
But did he think Nikki was the good side? Because he knew she wasn't real before.
I don't know.
I kind of read it more like this is like a violent evolution where, so obviously the first person who says, you know, long live the new flesh is Bianca, because she sort of puts that idea in his head that, you know, you're this new thing, you're You're a mutant, right? You're one of the X-Men. You're not one of these normies anymore. You've changed. How literal that is entirely open for debate. But I kind of like the ending to me, like this idea he has to kill his physical self, is that these ideas, because like I don't want to say that he's become just this like telepathic energy and he's like evolving into just a like a, you know, he's
like a TV signal.
Like a TV signal. I was going to compare it to like a, you know, those like evolved forms we get every so often on the old Star Trek, which is like, oh, they're just like they're so evolved, they're like godlike beings now, who are just like lights in the sky. Like the idea that he's just kind of become that, but yeah, he's evolving into a TV signal.
And Babylon 5.
I wasn't going to bring that up because you like to shit on it.
It's silly. It's not silly when Star Trek does it though.
I'm not even going to dignify that. I like that episode of Babylon 5. Tara's incorrect.
It's an intense episode. We learned a lot about telepaths that day.
But like, no, I think there is that kind of idea of it, but it's kind of sad because it's almost like it's saying humanity's entering into this new stage, but sadly to go into it, we're having to like kill who we were before to get there. So, like, you know, basically, I think what it's saying is that once we've like went over a threshold, we can't really go back. Like once we're in a world where we have, you know, social media, for example, to use like a modern version. Like once we're used to all this feed of information, like how do you, not so much social media, but do you like when your internet's down for a day or two?
No.
You don't? No, because it's like, I can't just look something up. Like I've thought of something, oh, I'll look it up. Oh no, I can't because the internet's not there. You get annoyed and you're mad. It's like you get withdrawal. You're like, damn it, I need my fix. I need connectivity.
It's true. I mean, we are really much more fused to technology than even James Woods is in this case.
Yeah, and that's a good way of putting it, is that we are more fused to it and that we need it to live. It's a part of us now. And this is what this movie was already getting at. I can't tell you
how many things are controlled over the internet for me now.
Yeah. You know, that's the thing, to go back to, you know, when he's first given this mission, and they give him the mission to kill his partners by putting like a tape in his stomach vagina.
Oh yeah, we haven't talked about that. That's a really cool scene.
Well, yeah, because it comes up when he's watching he's starting to get paranoid and he's got his gun around, and he's sitting watching the Videodrome as he's holding his gun. He's sitting topless, but he's got the holster on, and he's just.
You said before that he was developing a rash, so we see like a red strip.
Yeah. On
his abdomen.
But then it opens up, and he puts the gun in, and his hand comes out, and then the hallucination, if that's what it is, open for debate, ends, and he's like, "Where's the gun?" And it's like, it's inside him.
Freaking out, he can't find his gun.
It's inside him. So then later on, when it opens up again, and the bad guy puts the tape in his stomach vagina, he then pulls out the gun like it's instinct, and then the gun starts to fuse with his hand. But it, like, I actually think it's less interesting when you see it later on, when it's just like a mess of flesh. I think it looks cool when it first happens though, because it's very Borg-like.
It's like the screws are coming through the fingertips into his wrist.
Yeah, and it's got, you can see like the piping, almost like it's a Borg or like a Tetsuo the Iron Man type style thing.
I agree. It looks better that way, but I understand why it needs to be more organic, like it is just an extension of an organ.
Yeah. But obviously, I think that symbolism does make sense to me, that he's so connected to his technology that even the gun is just part of him now.
Yeah. I mean, I think the gun has been used as a phallic imagery for a long time for a reason too. So the fact that this one looks like an organ, like he's got almost like he's got genitalia at the end of his arm, I think makes sense.
Yes. And again, I think when he fires it at his partners, which is actually quite a violent death. See, you don't see the shot landing, but when it cuts back to the second guy he shoots, and he's like sitting there, and there's just like blood squirting out of his head. It's quite graphic. He's not pulling punches.
It is so graphic. His brains pop out.
Yeah.
Like on their own. Like it's a Reanimator movie.
But much like when the gun shot from the TV hand, when the hand was coming through the TV, it again looked more phallic even before, because you can see like a hole forms when he fires it, and it just kind of it looks like a pee hole. I'll just let's see what it looks like.
This conversation is so stupid.
Well, I think we're having a serious conversation, but we're not necessarily avoiding some lighthearted shenanigans as we go.
I know Let's revert back to middle school.
But I think those moments really live because the effects are so fun. They're not necessarily always the most realistic looking, but then again, some of this stuff, like, what can you say actually looks realistic per se?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I think
they look great.
They're all practical, which I think helps. I think if it was CG, it would look fake, even though you could argue, well, what does real look? Well, it looks like it's really there. And I think that goes a long way. Because if it was CG and it looked like CG, it would be like, well, it's just added on top. It's like cartoon, almost.
Mm-hmm.
So it would feel phony in that respect. I think this being physical, at the time they had no other choice because they had to do it physically. It's 1983. But I think if you were doing this again today, I'd be like, no, you do as much of it practically as possible, because practicality is what makes it feel disgusting. If it was CG, it would just look
Maybe Brandon will have a sci-fi movie. Well, he actually already does, right? Infinity Pool. I guess Possessor was also sci-fi we did on this channel. But, like more sci-fi like David does.
Yeah, we did Possessor. And we will do Infinity Pool sometime this year, I imagine.
Yep.
Because the new hotness, the new Cronenberg hotness. Yeah. What other set pieces with us? Oh, we have to talk about him. So when he kills the two guys who did this to him, the first one's the guy who gave him the show in the first place, the guy who like pirated the signal. He didn't really, he was just playing him a tape, as we find out. But his
Same
death
plot as The Ring.
His death is quite wacky. How's it the same plot as The Ring?
You gotta share the videotape, but don't watch it yourself.
But he doesn't have to share it. He's not going to die in 7 days because he saw the tape.
They manipulated him into watching a tape that would be his demise.
It wouldn't, it wouldn't necessarily have been his demise.
But it was.
Yeah, by suicide.
Suicide by tape.
Sadako or Samara in the American version didn't come out of the TV and kill him. I wonder if the director of The Ring, the original The Ring, saw this and was partly inspired by it, because the idea of something coming out of TV is definitely in this as well.
Yeah. Yeah?
I still don't think the plot's like The Ring, though. I think that's a leap.
It's not the worst comparison.
Well, no, I mean, obviously there's worse. You could compare it to The Little Mermaid, but...
Part of your world.
Which is something we should probably mention, is that because he does watch some of the old psychiatrist tapes that also have the Videodrome signal, you could argue that he's actually had it from two different sources, wanting to do something different.
Yeah, that's true.
And maybe that's why the daughter later on can kind of like sway him to the other side, because he's had some of like their Videodrome signal as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so the guy who gave him the tape in the first place, he actually goes to put in a new order. He gives him a new tape in his stomach vagina, but then James Woods, because he's in control, closes it. And then when the guy pulls out his hand, it's like a cube. It's like his hand's been cut off, and like there's part of the bone's still there, but at the end of the bone where the hand would be, there's like a cube about the size of a Rubik's cube.
No, it's like it's a type of bomb, right? That's used in warfare. It's like a grenade, but you throw it, and when it impacts,
I'm trying to think.
It's a real type of bomb.
But it's got a cube at the end, though, right?
Yeah, it looks like a metal club, in a way.
Yeah, but there's a cube shape to it, because that's what makes it look so weird to me, because it's like such an odd shape to be there instead of a hand. But yeah, obviously it does explode like a grenade. Yeah, absolutely it does. Because the guy like goes back in fear and screams and then explodes, and I'm like, okay, that was fun.
That was a really good death.
I don't know if it tops the head explosion from Scanners, which we've not done yet on the show, which we will, but that is the primo movie person exploding scene.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. I think I've seen the scene.
I mean, you've probably seen the GIF, if nothing else. You've seen the little clip of the head exploding. Yeah.
I can't wait.
Yeah. Whereas the head guy, the businessman dude, he gets shot on stage, but then his body kind of starts to like bubble and like parts start coming out.
They go full Reanimator with it, like his organs start popping out.
I didn't remember, like, I always remembered the gun fusion thing, and I remembered the stomach opening up because it happens a few times, and obviously the stuff popping out of the TV. I did not remember all of this, like, more insane gore that happened with the people who were getting killed.
Yeah.
That was surprising to me.
The only thing I've really seen a lot, clips-wise, is the head going into the TV. When he's being seduced by the TV with the red woman on it, with Blondie.
Yeah. It threw me when you first said that, because I'm like, she's not blonde. What are you talking about?
I mean, she was when she was singing.
I'm sure she was, but she's like a redhead in this.
She is. Plus, Blondie makes me think of Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. You know what you are.
Okay. Well, I think, is there any other, like, gory set pieces we've not mentioned? Are there any other practical effects? There's definitely some more stuff with the TV going all flesh-like and bubbling.
It's pretty graphic when the henchman goes to punch him in the belly, in the abdomen, where the vagina is and stuff like that, and he's reaching inside and looking for stuff, and James Woods is just really going with the acting when it comes to the pain. Like, it looks good.
I love how literal you can, like, if you want to just take this as everything's actually happening physically and it's not just in his head. I love the idea that he's gotten a superpower to, like, morph a gun out of his, like, it looks like a normal hand most of the time, but he just, like, morphs it into a gun. He can open up his stomach. Like, it's quite a disgusting literal thing that's happening if it is indeed literally happening. But that is open for
nightmarish
debate. And honestly, if you want to believe it's literal, you can. If you want to believe that it's mostly just in his head, obviously he's definitely, like, something's definitely happening to his head, if nothing else. But if you want to believe that it is just his head, or maybe you could read this as all of it is complete bullshit, and this is all just his brain's being rotted by all the crap he watches, and that's the which doesn't feel quite right coming from Cronenberg, admittedly.
Yeah,
but
like, what do you think the message is then? Because clearly Cronenberg thinks that there's a line and he's not crossed it.
I think if we're looking at this of, like, what Cronenberg's saying with this movie on a personal level, I would say that maybe this character is less what he thinks he is and more what other people think he is. So he's almost like doing like a...
Fine, I'll write that movie where you guys think I'm doing the bad stuff.
Yeah, like, it's almost like
he's even worse.
He's saying, this is the caricature that you think I am, so I'm going to make a movie about, like, the monster you see me as, and kind of kill him at the end, because I'm saying, no, he doesn't exist, he's dead.
And he's not as bad as the real violence. You know, real violence is definitely worse. Reality TV.
Yeah, or maybe, like, maybe he's saying, if this is more of a sort of, like, a romantic way of looking at it, but maybe he's saying that, you know, his making movies is him searching for that, like, next stage, that evolution to the new flesh, and he'll never really find it, but that's what the goal always is to find that. And it's not until he's dead that he'll maybe feel like he's achieved it or something.
Long
I don't know.
live the new flesh. It's a great title.
It's a great statement. But you think they should have called the movie that?
Yeah.
Nah, Videodrome is such a good title. I like Videodrome.
Videodrome's good, but, like, long live the new flesh.
Because
that would be the sequel, right? Like Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh.
when they first bring the title up and, like, the psychiatrist is explaining what it means, or I think Max is explaining to his secretary, like, what he thinks it means, or he's explaining the title, and he talks about how it's you know, a drome, like, in an arena or a battle. So it's the idea that, and this goes back into, like, the idea of, like, the good side and the bad side, like, fighting with it, is that it is literally the next, like, type of war that will be fought is in technology. And again, that's kind of true when you think about, like, Russian bots and stuff, like try to sway how people think in the West, and, you know, stuff like that. You know, or even just the fact that there's a whole thing right now where the US government is going to ban TikTok if it's not sold because it's too much of a, because it's owned by, like, someone in China. Yeah, so, like, that is definitely a concern. The idea of, like, viral sort of manipulation and warfare, like, you know, this is obviously, again, it's more literal in that they're fighting for this man's brain with video signals, which is a little bit different. But, you know, that's kind of what it, you know, again, you can easily apply this to, like, stuff in the future or the present to us. So all that stuff's really cool.
Yep, it's great when sci-fi pays off that way.
Yeah, and it's never exact. It's never like, oh, they got every detail right, but the ideas behind it are all
but
completely valid.
being able to be a bit more prophetic and able to see the patterns and it actually plays out.
Oh, for sure. Some of the stuff that we haven't really talked about is like early on when he's looking for like where it comes from, and he asks like, it's not his agent, that's not her role, but it's this older woman who is like, she brings him shows and finds out who owns them and tries to sell them to the station, stuff like that. I'm not exactly sure what you call that role.
Yeah, I don't know.
But he wants this,
Content
and
provider.
he asks her to go find it, and she doesn't really want to, but then she finds it, and she's like, "You want nothing to do with this. You don't want to go anywhere near it." And it is notable. There's like one of his hallucination moments when he's had like a particularly bad hallucination. He wakes up, and he should be alone, but there's like someone next to him in the bed, and he pulls the sheet, and it's her. It's the older woman, and like she's dead. And she also appears briefly as well earlier on. I think it's when he's seeing Nikki dance for him or something like that. There's a moment where it shows the older woman instead for just like one shot, and then goes back to Nikki. And maybe the implication is what you were saying, like he's actually seeing Nikki's face on her. So maybe he's with her during some of these earlier scenes.
That's how I was interpreting it.
And then, the idea that like she was there to curate like the old media he dealt in, but he's moving on to the new stuff. So she was like, not his conscience, but like she was there to like provide the stuff that was deemed acceptable in the old scale, and he's moving on to the new flesh and all that stuff. So he's sort of leaving that side behind. So that's why she dies, in a thematic sense. Does she literally die? Does he actually kill her? That's because she's not there in the bed when the other guy comes.
No, I don't think so, because he gets his coworkers to come check it out, and she's not there.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it is worth mentioning that stuff, because again, it's this idea that people keep warning him, people keep saying, "Hey, don't go this extreme, don't go this far," and he has to keep looking. Yeah,
I've decided "Long Live the New Flesh" is going to be my album name.
very good. Alternatively, you could read this as Cronenberg like talking about himself and saying that he's playing with fire, and he's worried that one day he might actually cross a line. Like, he likes looking for the extreme and exploring how we think and how we approach violence and
sex. It's hard not to see him in this role, straight from the beginning.
But this idea that the ending is like him saying that, one day maybe I will like cross over into like a territory I'm not comfortable with, and I hope it never happens.
Well, this is more early in his career, so maybe he was kind of worried that maybe people are right about him. Maybe he is going to inspire people to do terrible things. Because
before this, he'd already made Scanners, he'd already done Shivers and Rabid, and so some of his notable films had already came, even though this is still relatively early, and obviously there's a lot of stuff he did after this, but he really blossomed in the 70s. So this is like established Cronenberg at his, I don't know if it's fair to say prime necessarily, but if the 70s was him rising and proving himself with lower budget stuff, the 80s was like, because you'll notice this was released by Universal, so this is like a proper studio, and then The Fly remakes Fox, so like he was doing movies with proper studios in the 80s versus 70s where he's doing, I don't even know who owns like some of those earlier films, but I assume they're all Canadian companies because he's from Canada land.
Yep, probably. Wasn't he working for a Canadian broadcasting company?
And this
CBC.
Yeah, I think I noticed in the credits as well. It was like thanking, like I think it was filmed in Canada and was. I think it is technically a Canadian production, but
he's
Universal.
one of my people.
Yeah, you sick freaks.
That's
a lot
right.
of you. Joe, how you got this? He's been looking too much into the eye of the Okopogo, and like it's corrupted him.
You can't do that. It'll give you madness.
Yes, the Ogopogo is the Canadian knockoff of the Loch Ness Monster, everyone. Don't worry about it. Tara told me about him.
Knockoff.
He's a knockoff.
It was there before the white people were there.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah. It's not a colonial Canadian thing. It's a native Canadian thing.
All right. Okay. Okay. The jury's out then on which one came first, but
Ogopogo's cooler though. First of all, better name. Second of all,
what?
it'll make you mad if you see it. That's why there's no sightings.
That sounds like the perfect excuse for why no one's ever seen it, quite frankly. Stupid Canadian myth.
Ancient.
That's why Canadians are so nice. Is because they want to make sure they know when someone's seen the Ogopogo. So they if they're being an asshole, it's like, oh, they must have seen it.
Yeah, that's what we used to do. That's where the Karens came from.
Oh dear.
But yep, pretty good movie.
That's a good movie. I think it's really strong. I think it's on my upper end of Cronenberg movies. It's better for me because Cronenberg for me is hit and miss to an extent. Where I'd say I like more of his stuff that I don't like, but there's definitely some that I don't like that much. And I think this is definitely strongly into my positive side, where I'm like, no, I like these ideas. I think it's like touching on subjects and ideas that I'm connecting with, and I love the aesthetic because it's all about video signals and shit, and I do love that stuff.
Yeah.
And it does.
A good time.
It's the sort of thing where you're probably watching it for this first time and going, is this a sci-fi movie for like half the movie? And then it starts doing stuff and you're like, oh, okay, it's definitely sci-fi now. It takes a little while to get the sci-fi.
A little alternate future also.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Yeah. I'd say it feels like alternate, just like, you know when it says like
not too distant.
Not too distant, yeah. It's like right around the corner future kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it feels like for sure. Yeah, so I think there's some interesting ideas with his character and like the idea that he's getting these comeuppance for doing this, and maybe that's also Cronenberg saying, hey, if I really am a kind of a force for bad and corruption on the world, if I am doing something bad to people, then maybe one day I will get my comeuppance for doing it. Fast forward 30 plus years and his son's making even more depraved shit than he is.
The karma. One day you're gonna have a son who's just like you.
He's probably pleased with that. He's probably quite happy.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, he was sculpted that way.
Yeah. The only reason why we didn't do Infinity Pool, by the way, when it came out, is because it came out at very different times. It's actually playing in theaters for me right now, and it was months ago.
It's long gone for me.
So yeah, we'll be doing that later in the year when it's readily available and whatnot. But yeah, I am glad we did another Cronenberg movie though. A good one.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Very good. I'm happy to see this one finally.
Yeah.
I'm a little less embarrassed about my list of unseen movies.
A little less. So
Still gotta do Godfather 2.
well, we can't do that on Ace, so there's nothing sci-fi about it, I'm afraid. But yeah, I think I mean, maybe I shouldn't sit and say what my favorite Cronenberg is and sort of rank them, because maybe one day there'll be enough to do like a top 10 or something like that. But
yeah, totally.
yeah, when I say enough, I mean when we've talked about enough of them. Not that obviously he's made enough to have a top 10 already. Most of his career, of course, is already passed. Not that he's done. I'm sure he'll make maybe another movie or two before he's properly finished. But yeah, I do like Videodrome quite a bit. So yeah.
What are you gonna rate it then?
I don't go first. You know this, Tara.
I think I do really like this one a lot. I think it was fun to talk about. It was definitely fun to watch. And you know, I like Crimes of the Future. I didn't really love it. You liked it much more than me.
I did, yeah.
I think this is like the perfect amount of Cronenberg that I enjoy. You know, like it's just the right amount of gross, just the right amount of intrigue, just the right amount of like good characters that you're watching. I don't know, just like all the violence and stuff is kind of, you know, it's funneled into these specific moments, and I like it a lot. So I'm gonna give this one an 8. I really like this one.
Okay. I don't know if I would say. I would say this is more Cronenberg than Crimes of the Future is, which is why I'm not sure what you meant when you said this is the right amount of Cronenberg. It's obviously you're saying there wasn't enough in Crimes of the Future.
No, I think there's too much in it.
I don't know. I don't feel that way. But I mean, that's fine. I like Crimes of the Future a lot. I think this, I would say, feels like, I think Crimes of the Future has a really specific tone that I like. It's got a really kind of heavy, dramatic tone, whereas this movie feels more just sort of like of its time in the 80s, and then it gets weird as it goes, you know, as the weird stuff starts to happen.
I like the look of the film a bit more.
Oh sure. No. But I like it. I actually rate it the same. 8 out of 10 is exactly what I feel about Videodrome. I think it's a really solid, great movie with very memorable moments and effects. It's one that, you know, I don't think you can definitively say it's definitely saying this, but there's definitely a few things that come to mind when you're watching it. And arguably it will be even better in a second viewing when you've got some of those already in your head and you're sort of looking for the clues and, you know, does the ideas that I had match up with all these scenes? You know?
Yeah, I took a chance and I purchased it, so I'll be able to watch it again.
And you could argue as well that the idea that, you know, the professor who helped design it, who is already dead but living on via like monologues and stuff, you could argue that he was like, he'd already like transcended into the new flesh like Max does at the end. He's almost like the foreshadowing of like, no, you don't die just because your body's dead. Like, you keep living in media. And that's also something you could talk about with social media is like, you know, people die, but if they've been posting stuff on social media for years, it's like, you can go and like look at what they were saying and like images they were posting for, you know, potentially decades, depending on, you know, when. So, it's fascinating. Or hell, even us making podcasts, like how many hours of us talking about movies exist on the internet now?
Too many.
Too many or not enough.
The people will decide.
There's always
going to Patreon.
There's always more movies. Oh yeah, Patreon. Nice segue, Tara. Patreon.com/MileFuzzTV. You can support the show and all the content over there by giving money every month. That's how Patreon works. I sort of put myself in a corner with that sense. Yeah, it's Patreon. You give some money, you get some things in return. But mostly you just support the content and make sure that it keeps coming. But you get some bonuses every month. There's a bonus episode at the $3 tier. You know, we've done, what was the last one we did? Space Mutiny was the last one we did.
Yeah, that was so much fun.
Coming up next time, I believe we're going to do Species 2. Sometimes we'll do like the direct-to-video sequels of stuff that we did on the main show.
We already did Species 2.
Did we?
Yeah.
Okay, Species 3 then. We decided a Species movie would be next, okay? The third one. If we aren't doing the second one, we'll do the third one. That shows you how memorable it was.
I remember him shooting his head off and then the CGI of it building back up.
Oh, I remember the wheelchair bit now I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do Species 3 next as a bonus episode. So yeah, bonus episode at the $3 tier. The $5 tier, you get Meltdown, which is just a show where we get together once a month and talk about all the movies we've been watching. Not sci-fi, just all the movies we've been watching that weren't for review. So I don't talk about anything that I've talked about on this or Screams or Collector's Cut. Just everything else.
Yep.
Plus
get to know us a little bit better.
Plus we do a little sci-fi quiz with each other and see how we fare. So and obviously you get bonuses for the other movie shows as well on the Patreon. So go have a look, see if you're interested. But of course you can support us for free by liking, subscribing, commenting. All these things help. Giving us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast from. All those things do help. Tara's trying to help, but she's making a ruckus.
No, I hit the microphone.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. It's the end of the show.
What are we doing next time?
We're winding down. We're doing a vote winner next. Actually, that's why they are Patreon perks, is that everyone in the voting tier, which is a higher tier, it's a $10 tier, but you get to vote between 3 movies every month, and for 80 season, we had a very competitive vote between 3 80 sci-fi movies, and the winner, which we're doing next time, was Escape from New York. So
whoa,
we got some Carpenter.
What?
Yeah.
Did he do the music for it?
It sounds like one he did do the music for, but I actually think I remember that he doesn't. And being surprised that he didn't, because it sounds like one of his scores.
Okay.
It's got a good main theme though, so we'll see how it fares.
I've never seen it.
I love John Carpenter, but I will say I'm always a little disappointed when I watch Escape from New York. So we'll see if I still feel the same way.
Okay.
Next time. We'll see. On paper, sounds amazing, but something just doesn't click for me with it. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how we feel. I am looking forward to watch it. It's an easy enough watch, if nothing else. So I'm looking forward to watching it and talking about it. So, but that has been Videodrome on the Atomic Cinema Experiment. Thank you very much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep watching movies. Keep watching sci-fi and computer. Reach into your stomach vagina and add salsa.